That morning, no one expected a single act of defiance to change military history. What began as routine training became a moment every soldier on base would remember, and one that would test the difference between following orders and doing what's right. The sun hung low over the Naval Air Station in Coronado, casting long shadows across the tarmac. Petty Officer First Class Elena Vasquez stood at attention in the pre-dawn chill, her boots planted firmly on the cracked concrete. The air smelled of salt and jet fuel, carried on a breeze that tugged at the edges of her camouflage blouse. Around her, the hangar bay echoed with the sharp cadence of commands. "Fall in! Eyes front!" Her unit, SEAL Team 7's K-9 support detachment, assembled in precise rows, rifles slung across their chests, helmets tucked under arms. This was standard procedure, a morning drill to certify their working dogs for deployment readiness. No deviations, no excuses. The chain of command was ironclad here, from the commanding officer down to the lowliest handler. Elena's gaze flicked briefly to her partner, Rex, a sleek German shepherd with a coat the color of desert sand. He sat at her heel, ears pricked, his dark eyes scanning the formation with the same vigilance she'd trained into him over 3 years. Rex wasn't just a dog, he was her shadow, her sensor in the fog of war. They deployed together to the sands of Syria, where his nose had sniffed out IEDs that would have ended patrols before they began. In the quiet moments between ops, when the weight of command pressed down, Rex's steady presence was the one constant that never faltered. She placed a gloved hand on his head, feeling the warmth of his fur against the leather. He didn't move, didn't whine, just leaned into her touch with the unspoken loyalty that bound them. Lieutenant Commander Harlan Graves, the detachment's CO, paced the front of the formation, his voice cutting through the hum of idling generators. Graves was a lifer, broad-shouldered and square-jawed, with ribbons on his chest that spoke of campaigns Eleanor could only read about in briefings. "Listen up," he barked, his eyes sweeping the ranks. "Today's exercise simulates a hot extraction from hostile territory. Handlers, your dogs will clear the hangar for threats. Explosives, contraband, anything that doesn't belong. We move as one. No lone wolves." His gaze lingered on Eleanor for a beat longer than necessary. She'd heard the rumors. Graves didn't trust female handlers in K-9 roles, saw them as liabilities in the high-stakes world of SEAL ops. But she'd earned her place through quals and deployments, and Rex's record spoke louder than whispers. The drill commenced with mechanical precision. Teams filed into the massive hangar, its steel beams groaning faintly under the weight of fluorescent lights flickering to life. The space was a cavern of shadows, stacked with crates of supplies, spare parts for Black Hawks, and the faint metallic tang of aviation grease. Elena and Rex took point on the eastern wing, as assigned. "Search," she murmured, her voice low and steady. Rex surged forward, nose to the ground, his tail a rigid line. His paws clicked softly on the concrete, weaving between pallets and tool benches. Elena followed, her M4 carbine at low ready, scanning for anomalies, while her mind ticked through protocols. Clear the perimeter, report findings, maintain formation. Halfway through the sweep, the routine fractured. From the far end of the hangar came a sharp whistle, not the signal for all clear, but something improvised, mocking. Elena's head snapped up. There, by a cluster of shadowed crates, stood Seaman recruit Tyler Kane, a new transfer to the logistics support crew. He was leaning against a forklift, arms crossed, grinning at a couple of his buddies. Kane had a reputation, cocky, always testing boundaries, the kind of sailor who thought pranks built camaraderie. But this wasn't funny. He tossed a scrap of oily rag toward Rex, the fabric reeking of diesel, designed to distract or worse. Rex halted mid-stride, his hackles rising. He didn't bark. SEAL dogs were trained for silence, but a low rumble built in his throat, his body coiling like a spring. Elena's pulse quickened. "Kane," she called out, her tone clipped and professional. "Secure that area. This is an active drill." She kept her eyes on him, hand signaling Rex to hold. The dog obeyed, but his stare fixed on Kane with an intensity that made the air thicken. Kane straightened, his smirk fading into something harder. "Relax, Vasquez. It's just a joke. Your mutt's too uptight anyway." His buddies chuckled, but the sound died quick under the weight of watching eyes. Graves was across the hangar, but handlers nearby had paused, radios crackling with unspoken tension. In the SEAL world, discipline wasn't optional, it was survival. Kane's stunt wasn't just a prank, it violated protocol, potentially compromising the entire exercise. Elena felt the pull of the chain. Report it, let command handle the reprimand. That's how the system worked, ranks preserving order. But as Rex pressed against her leg, his nose twitching toward the crates behind Kane, something shifted. The dog's refusal to advance wasn't fear, it was fixation, the kind that had saved lives before. Elena's conscience tugged. Obey the drill, ignore the distraction, or trust her partner's instinct over the hierarchy's rigid flow. She glanced at the crates, half obscured in shadow, and the faint scent of something off the protocol list. Not fuel, but earth, decay, something buried. "Rex! Seek!" she whispered, stepping forward despite the knot in her gut. Kane's eyes narrowed, but he didn't move. The hangar seemed to hold its breath, the distant thrum of a helicopter rotor underscoring the standoff. Elena's boot scraped the concrete as she closed the distance, Rex pulling ahead with purposeful strides. The other handlers watched from their positions, murmurs rippling through the ranks like static on a comms line. Graves's voice boomed from the PA. "Vasquez, report your sector." But she was already committed, the moral line blurring between duty and the quiet voice urging her to uncover what Rex sensed. In that moment, with the weight of her unit's eyes on her, Elena chose conscience over immediate obedience. Little did she know, Rex's defiance would unearth secrets that challenged everything they'd been told about their fallen brothers. The hangar's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh pools of white on the concrete floor, where shadows pooled like spilled oil around the crates. Elena's heart thudded steadily against her ribs, the rhythm syncing with Rex's measured steps. She kept her voice low, a handler's whisper honed from countless drills. "Easy, boy, show me." Rex's nose worked the air, nostrils flaring as he zeroed in on the stack of wooden pallets, their edges splintered and marked with faded shipping labels, standard issue for logistics, or so they appeared. But something was wrong. The dog's body language screamed it, his ears pinned back, muscles taut under his tactical vest. Kane shifted his weight, blocking the path with casual defiance, his arms still crossed over his chest. "Vasquez, you deaf? Drill's over for your sector. Move on." His voice carried that edge of false authority, the kind that grated in a place where real ranks meant life or death. The other logistics crew lingered nearby, their postures loose. But Elena caught the flicker of uncertainty in their eyes. This wasn't just a prank anymore. It was interference, and in SEAL training, interference could cascade into catastrophe. She ignored him, eyes locked on Rex. The dog circled the crates once, twice, then planted his paws and let out a single controlled alert, a sharp huff through his muzzle, trained to signal without alerting hostiles. Elena's gloved hand went to her radio, thumb hovering over the transmit button. Protocol demanded she call it in. Possible anomaly, Sector East, requesting backup. But Graves's earlier command echoed in her mind. Move as one, no lone wolves. Reporting now would pull the whole team, expose Kane's stunt to scrutiny, but it might also bury whatever Rex had found under layers of paperwork and denials. The air thickened with the scent of stale coffee from a nearby thermoses and the underlying rot Rex had latched onto. Earthy, like disturbed soil after rain, mingled with something sharper, metallic. Elena knelt beside the dog, her knee pressing into the gritty floor, and ran her fingers along the crate's seam. No locks, just nailed shut, but the wood felt off, softer than regulation pine, as if it had been hastily repainted to match the hangar's inventory. "Kane," she said evenly, rising to her full height, "step aside. This isn't a game." He uncrossed his arms, stepping closer instead, his breath visible in the chill. "You think you're special because of that flea bag. Handlers like you get dogs to do the dirty work. Real SEALs don't need pets." The words landed like a slap, laced with the undercurrent of resentment she'd heard before, doubts about her place in the unit, whispers that K9 roles softened the edge of combat. Her jaw tightened, but she held her ground, the chain of command a steel thread pulling her toward compliance. Report the insubordination. Let Graves handle it. That's what obedience looked like. Rex growled low, a vibration Elena felt through her boot. The dog pressed forward, nudging the crate with his shoulder, refusing to yield. In that instant, the moral fault line cracked wider. Elena's mind flashed to her last deployment, a brother-in-arms, Petty Officer Marco Ruiz, lost in a Syrian ambush. The official report called it a total wipeout, her forward recon team gone, chalked up to enemy fire. She'd grieved in silence, Rex curling at her feet during the memorial, as if sensing the hole in her squad. But doubts had lingered, whispers in briefings about incomplete intel, about units vanishing without trace. Was this connected? Trusting Rex now meant defying the flow, risking her career for a hunch. "Vasquez!" Graves's voice cracked over the radio, static-laced and urgent. "Status! Now!" Handlers nearby had frozen, their dogs mirroring the tension, leashes taut. The hangar's vastness amplified every sound. The creak of boots, the distant whine of a turbine spooling up outside. Elena's finger depressed the button. "Sir, Rex has an alert on unmarked crates. East Wing, requesting clearance to investigate." She didn't mention Kane, not yet. That would come later in the after-action report. Footsteps echoed from the main bay, Graves striding in, flanked by two senior handlers, their faces set in stern lines. He was all business, cover pulled low, sidearm holstered but prominent. "Explain," he demanded, eyes flicking from Elena to the crates, then to Kane, who suddenly looked smaller, his bravado evaporating under the CO's glare. "Sir, Rex fixated here. Non-standard scent profile," Elena reported, her words clipped, professional. She saluted crisply, holding it as Rex sat alert at her side. Graves nodded once, gesturing to the logistics crew. "Kane, you and your team, stand down. Full disclosure on these crates. Origin, contents, manifest." Kane's face paled, but he nodded, mumbling, "Aye, sir. Just storage overflow." The CO turned to Eleanor. "Pry it open, but if this is nothing, Vasquez, it's on you." The weight of that settled like sand in her lungs, her quals, her deployments, all riding on this moment. She pulled a crowbar from her kit, the metal cold and heavy, and wedged it under the lid. Rex paced beside her, whining softly, his nose inches from the wood. With a grunt, the nails gave way, splintering outward in a shower of dust. Inside, the crate wasn't filled with spare parts or ammo crates as expected. Folded neatly amid packing straw were documents, yellowed file folders, sealed in plastic against moisture, stamped with classified seals from Joint Special Operations Command. Elena's breath caught as she lifted one, the paper crinkling under her gloves. Manifests, sat imagery and, buried deeper, a stack of dog tags, glinting dully in the light. Names she recognized, Ruiz and others from her lost recon team. Not KIA reports, but evasion logs, survival signals logged as unconfirmed months after the ambush. Graves leaned in, his expression hardening from skepticism to steel. "Secure that, all of it." The hangar fell silent, save for the soft pant of Rex's breath, as if the dog understood the gravity. Kane backed away, eyes wide, the prank forgotten in the face of something far bigger, an institutional ghost rising from the shadows. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she resealed the crate, but she steadied them, clipping the tags to her vest for chain of custody. This wasn't just a find, it was proof, challenging the narrative of loss that had haunted her unit. Word spread like a whisper through the ranks as the team converged, radios buzzing with controlled chatter. Graves pulled Eleanor aside, his voice low. "You just opened a door, Petty Officer. Command's going to want answers. Yours first." She met his gaze, Rex at her heel, the bond between them a quiet anchor. Obedience had its place, but conscience had just rewritten the rules. Outside, the sun crested the horizon, bathing the tarmac in gold as the first ripples of reckoning began to spread through the chain. The fluorescent lights hummed relentlessly as the hangar doors ground shut behind the last of the handlers, sealing the space into a vault of tension and scrutiny. Elena Vasquez stood at parade rest beside the opened crate, her posture rigid, the weight of the dog tags clipped to her vest, pulling like an invisible anchor. Rex sat motionless at her feet, his dark eyes fixed on the scattered documents now laid out on a makeshift table, foldable metal from the logistics kit, its surface scarred from years of field use. The air carried the musty tang of aged paper, mixed with the sharp bite of marker ink as Graves's team began cataloguing the find, gloved hands moving with deliberate care. Lieutenant Commander Graves paced the perimeter, his boots echoing in measured steps, radio clipped to his shoulder, crackling with incoming queries from base command. "Negative on visuals," he reported into the mic, his voice steady but edged with gravel. "Contents secured, awaiting transport protocols." He shot Elena a glance, not accusatory, but probing, the kind that weighed a subordinate's judgment against the chain's unyielding flow. She'd crossed a line by pushing forward without full clearance, but the evidence in front of them justified it, at least for now. Still, in the SEAL world, initiative without orders could unravel careers as surely as enemy fire. Elena kept her focus on Rex, scratching lightly behind his ears to ground herself. The dog's fur was warm, slightly damp from the morning's mist, a small comfort amid the rising storm. Her mind replayed the discovery, the evasion logs detailing faint radio pings from her lost recon team, signals dismissed as interference in the official after-action. Marco Ruiz's tag glinted under the lights, its inscription, name, blood type, service number, a stark reminder of the brother she'd mourned. If these were real, the unit hadn't perished in that Syrian ambush. They'd been left behind, perhaps captured, their status buried under layers of expediency. The moral chasm yawned wider, report through channels and risk the truth being sanitized, or push for transparency and face the institution's recoil. Kane and his logistics crew huddled in the corner, under guard by two stone-faced petty officers. The seaman's earlier smirk was gone, replaced by a pallor that spoke of dawning regret. "Sir, those crates came in last month. Manifest said surplus avionics," he stammered when Graves turned to him, voice pitching higher under the pressure. "I didn't look inside. Swear it." Graves' eyes narrowed, the CO's silence more damning than any shout. Insubordination in the face of evidence tampering could end a career before it started. But Elena sensed deeper currents. Kane's prank might have been a distraction, a crude attempt to derail the drill from probing too close. The hangar doors hissed open again, admitting a detail from base security. 4 Marines in crisp utilities, carrying sealed evidence lockers and a digital scanner for chain of custody logs. Their arrival marked the shift from internal drill to formal investigation, the kind that rippled up to JAG and beyond. Elena saluted as the lead Marine, a staff sergeant with a chest full of deployments, approached. "Petty Officer Vasquez, walk us through it." She nodded, recounting the sequence with precision: Rex's alert, Kane's interference, the pry of the crowbar. Her words were factual, stripped of emotion, but inside, her pulse thrummed with the cost, testifying against a fellow sailor. Even one like Kane tested the loyalty that bound the ranks. As the team photographed and bagged the documents, whispers filtered through the assembled handlers. "Ruiz's team thought they were ghosts," one murmured, his dog shifting uneasily at his side. Another handler, a veteran named Patel, met Elena's eyes across the space, a nod of quiet solidarity, his own canine partner mirroring Rex's vigilance. The bond between handlers and dogs extended to the humans too, forged in shared silences after losses, but not everyone shared the sentiment. From the logistics corner, a low mutter rose. "She's stirring shit for glory. Dog probably smelled rat piss." Graves overheard, his head snapping toward the source, a burly corporal named Ellis, Kane's shift lead. "Stow it," the CO barked, his voice slicing the air like a knife. "This isn't scuttlebutt hour. Every word here goes on record." The hangar fell quiet again, save for the soft click of scanners and the distant roar of an FA-18 taking off from the runway. Elena felt the eyes on her, the weight of judgment in a culture where women in combat roles still navigated invisible barriers. Her defiance had unearthed truth, but it also painted a target, accusations of overreach, of bending protocol for personal vendetta. By midday, the evidence was loaded into a secure Humvee, escorted by the Marines back to the intelligence annex. Graves pulled Eleanor into a side office, the door clicking shut behind them. The room was sparse, a metal desk, a single chair, walls lined with faded ops posters. Rex followed, curling under the desk with a contented sigh, his presence a buffer against the interrogation to come. "You knew something was off with those KIA reports?" Graves asked, leaning against the desk, arms crossed. His tone wasn't hostile but probing, testing her conscience against the oath of obedience. Eleanor met his gaze steadily. "Suspected, sir. The signals in the briefs. Too clean for a total loss. Rex doesn't lie." She paused, choosing words with care. "If they're alive, we owe them extraction, not a cover story." Graves exhaled, rubbing his jaw, the lines there deepening. He'd lost men too, ribbons earned in blood. The dilemma mirrored her own: uphold the chain, which might bury this again, or champion the find and invite audits that could expose systemic lapses, rushed intel, overlooked assets, the quiet failures that haunted special ops. Outside, the sun beat down on the tarmac, turning the air hazy with heat. Base personnel moved with purposeful strides, oblivious to the fracture forming within. Elena clipped Rex's leash as they exited, the dog's nose lifting to the breeze, as if scenting the path ahead. The public reckoning was just beginning. Briefings with command, depositions from witnesses like Kane. Her act of trust in Rex had ignited it, forcing the institution to confront its shadows. But as the Humvee's taillights faded toward the gate, Elena wondered if integrity would forge reform or forge her as the scapegoat. The afternoon sun slanted through the narrow windows of the intelligence annex, painting stripes of gold across the conference table where Elena Vasquez sat, her hands folded precisely in her lap. The room smelled of polished oak and fresh brewed coffee from the percolator in the corner, a mundane anchor amid the unfolding scrutiny. Rex lay at her feet, his flanks rising and falling in steady rhythm, the soft jingle of his tags the only sound breaking the hush as the investigative board assembled. This wasn't a courtroom, not yet. Just a preliminary hearing under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, convened with the efficiency of a well-oiled machine. But the stakes hummed in the air like high-tension wire. Her testimony could validate the find or unravel it, depending on how the chain absorbed the shock. Captain Lydia Torres, the JAG officer chairing the board, entered first, her uniform starched to perfection, folder tucked under one arm. Flanking her were two senior officers, a Navy intel colonel and a SEAL liaison from Coronado's command staff, both men with faces etched by years of classified briefs. Graves sat to Elena's right, his presence a silent endorsement, though his expression remained neutral, eyes forward. Kane and Ellis waited in an adjoining room, their statements pending. The logistics crew's manifest discrepancies already flagged for deeper audit. The board's recorder, a yeoman with a stenotype machine, nodded once, and the session began with the sharp click of a gavel substitute, a polished mallet on wood. "Petty Officer Vasquez," Torres began, her voice clear and measured, settling into the head chair. "Recount the events of this morning's drill. From Rex's initial alert to the crate's opening, precision matters here." Elena straightened, her response flowing like a debrief. The whistle's interruption, Rex's fixation, Kane's obstruction, the crowbar's leverage. She described the documents without flourish, the evasion logs time-stamped post-ambush, satellite pings correlating to a remote Syrian outpost, dog tags etched with names from her recon team. Her words were stripped bare, professional, but inside, each detail stirred the quiet ache of what-ifs. Marco Ruiz, alive perhaps, bartering scraps in captivity, while reports declared him dust. The colonel leaned forward, his pen tapping a slow rhythm on the table. "You deviated from protocol by investigating without immediate backup call. Explain your rationale." Eleanor met his gaze, chin level. "Sir, Rex's alert was unambiguous. Level 3 fixation per handler quals. Delaying risked evidence degradation or further interference." She didn't mention the personal ghosts. This was about procedure, not sentiment. Rex shifted slightly, his nose brushing her boot, a subtle reminder of the instinct that had bridged the gap. The board murmured, notes scribbling across pads, the air growing thicker with the scent of ink and restrained judgment. Graves interjected smoothly, his tone deferential yet firm. "Petty officers' actions align with K9 operational doctrine, ma'am. In the field, handlers trust their partners' reads over rigid timelines. This find validates that." Torres nodded, flipping through the preliminary photos, the crate's innards, tags glinting like accusations. But the questions turned sharper, probing the chain's underbelly. "These logs suggest intel lapses from last year's op, dismissed signals, unverified assets. How does your unit's command factor in?" The liaison cleared his throat, a subtle deflection. "Ongoing review, Captain. Focus remains on the Discovery's integrity." Outside the annex, the base stirred with subdued energy, sailors in coveralls hauling gear toward the flight line, the distant thump of rotors signaling a routine helo insertion. But whispers had already breached the walls, carried on the salt-laced breeze. A junior handler from Elena's detachment lingered near the door, his dog panting in the heat, eyes flicking toward the guarded entrance. Word of the hangar ghosts spread through mess halls and barracks, handlers trading quiet nods over MREs, their K9s sensing the shift in morale. Loyalty, once fractured by loss, now knit tighter around the possibility of redemption, not just for the lost team, but for the system that had let them fade. Kane's turn came next, escorted in by the yeoman, his uniform slightly rumpled, posture slumped under the board's collective stare. He saluted awkwardly, voice cracking as he testified. "The crates arrived via unlogged transport from a stateside depot labeled as decommissioned equipment. I didn't know, ma'am. Thought it was just junk. Didn't check manifests close." Torres's eyes narrowed. "And the distraction during the drill?" Udry, Kane swallowed, glancing at Eleanor. "Stupid prank, sir. No intent to hide anything." But the logs told otherwise. His shift's access codes matched the crate's entry stamps, a trail of oversight or worse. Ellis followed, his denial more vehement, but the board's recorder captured every evasion, the machine's clatter underscoring the unraveling. By late afternoon, the hearing adjourned for deliberation, the officers filing out with folders in hand. Elena rose, clipping Rex's leash, the dog's steady gait a counterpoint to her racing thoughts. Graves lingered, clapping a hand on her shoulder, brief, paternal. "You held the line in there. Command's auditing the Syrian op now. This could pull strings all the way to SOCOM." His words carried weight, a bridge between her defiance and institutional momentum. Yet doubt lingered. Would the truth surface or be compartmentalized into redacted files? As they stepped into the fading light, a cluster of handlers waited near the tarmac, their dogs forming a loose semicircle. Patel approached first, voice low. "Heard the tags. Ruiz's crew. Rex earned his keep today." Nods rippled through the group, a rare show of unity cutting across ranks. Even a logistics petty officer, unconnected to K9, offered a salute, his eyes respectful. The public reckoning extended beyond the boardroom, witnesses from the drill now vocal in after-action chats, pressuring command for transparency. Media hounds from the San Diego Union Tribune circled the gates, notebooks at ready, but base security held them at bay, for now. Elena walked Rex toward the kennels, the concrete warm underfoot, the horizon streaked with sunset hues. The dog's refusal in the hangar had sparked this. Not heroics, but a quiet insistence on truth, rippling through the chain. Her career teetered, praise for initiative or reprimand for overstep, but the moral core held firm. Inside rigid systems, integrity demanded witnesses, and today she'd found them. As the first stars pricked the dusk, the base's lights flickered on, illuminating paths yet to unfold. The evening briefing room in the intelligence annex felt smaller under the weight of gathered ranks, its walls paneled in dark acoustic foam that muffled the outside world, the persistent drone of base generators and the occasional low pass of a patrol helo. Elena Vasquez stood at the back, Rex at her side, his leash looped loosely around her wrist. The air was cool and sterile, laced with the faint ozone of projector bulbs warming up. Around the oblong table sat the core of the investigative team. Captain Torres from JAG, the intel colonel, Graves, and a fresh addition, a forensic analyst from Naval Criminal Investigative Service, her laptop open to encrypted files. Maps of Syrian terrain flickered on the screen, red pins marking the ambush site from last year's op, coordinates that had haunted Elena's after-action dreams. Torres rapped her knuckles on the table, calling the room to order. "Prelim findings from the hangar evidence. Analyst, lead off." The NCIS woman, Lieutenant Sarah Klein, nodded, her voice even as she pulled up scans of the documents. "Evasion logs confirm post-ambush activity. 3 distinct signals from a grid north of Al-Tanf, time-stamped 48 hours after the reported total loss. Dog tags match DNA profiles from the recon team's last medicals. No duplicates, no forgeries apparent." She paused, clicking to a grainy sat image. Thermal blooms suggesting human movement in a derelict compound. These weren't buried deep. Manifests routed through a secondary logistics chain, flagged as archival, but never declassified. Graves leaned forward, his chair creaking under his frame. Implications for command. His question hung, probing the moral undercurrent. Had higher-ups ignored the pings to close the book on a messy op, preserving operational tempo over lives? Torres met his gaze. Audit traces to a staff brief at CENTCOM, signals dismissed as ghost echoes from ECM jamming. But the crates routing. Bypassed standard intake, logistics oversight at minimum. Elena's fingers tightened on Rex's leash, the dog's ears twitching at the shift in tones. She remained silent, per protocol, but the revelation stirred the quiet fire in her chest. Duty demanded pursuit, yet the chain often prioritized closure. Klein continued, her presentation methodical. Tags include Ruiz, Hale, and Petrov, full team roster. Attached notes suggest evasion tactics, low-profile caching, possible local alliances. If captured, They're in black sites. If evading, they need extraction yesterday. The room absorbed it, faces hardening into the disciplined masks of officers weighing lives against bureaucracy. Elena's mind flashed to Marco Ruiz, his steady hand on a rifle during quals. The way he'd shared jerky with Rex after patrols, calling the dog the real operator. Mourning him had been an order, but this proof demanded more. Action, not just remembrance. The door swung open, admitting a yeoman with a sealed dispatch. "Sir, from SOCOM, prelim response." Torres broke the seal, scanning the printout. Her expression tightened. Full investigation greenlit. Vasquez's team flagged for advisory, K9 assets to support signal triangulation. A murmur rippled, praise laced with caution. Graves turned to Elena, his nod brief but affirming. "Your call on the drill saved this from rotting in storage, but expect heat, media's sniffing." Indeed, outside the annex, floodlights pierced the night, illuminating a cordon where reporters clustered. Their questions a distant buzz like angry hornets. Elena clipped Rex's leash tighter as the briefing broke, handlers dispersing to quarters with clipped salutes. In the corridor, Patel fell in step beside her, his own dog, a wiry Belgian Malinois named Jax, padding silently. Board cleared cane of intent, slap on the wrist, extra duty, but Ellis, reassigned pending deeper probe. His voice was low, respectful, the camaraderie of shared vigilance. Elena nodded, the concrete cool under her boots. "Doesn't change the tags." Patel glanced at Rex. "No, it doesn't. Handlers are buzzing, pushing for a memorial update, real names on the wall." The words carried the ripple of legacy. Her defiance, amplified by witnesses, was forging quiet reform. Handlers leveraging the find to demand better intel protocols. Back in the kennels, the space was a sanctuary of routine, rows of chain-link runs, the soft rustle of straw bedding, the metallic tang of water bowls filling automatically. Eleanor unclipped Rex, watching as he trotted to his mat, circling once before settling with a sigh. She knelt, running a hand along his flank, feeling the steady thrum of his heart. "Good boy," she murmured, the praise simple, unadorned. The dog leaned into her, nose nudging her palm, his loyalty a mirror to the conscience that had driven them both. Outside, floodlights cast long shadows across the yard, where a pair of sentries paced, rifles at sling. Sleep came fitfully in her barracks rack, the thin mattress doing little to ease the tension in her shoulders. Dreams blended hangar crates with Syrian dunes. Rex digging through sand, unearthing not IEDs but faces, pleading eyes under keffirs. She woke before reveille, the base stirring with the first grey light, Chow Hall aromas wafting on the breeze. Over coffee, black, steaming from a field mug, Graves found her at a corner table. "Commands looping you in tomorrow?" Triangulate those signals with Rex's profile. His nose matched the crate's scent to soil samples from the logs. His tone was matter-of-fact, but his eyes held approval. "You're not just a handler now, symbol of what K9 brings to the table." The morning brought escalation. A secure call from CENTCOM piped into the annex's skiff. Elena stood at attention as admirals' voices crackled over the line. Their questions probing her quals, Rex's certification, the drill's minutiae. "Petty officer, your deviation. Justify." She did, voice steady. "Instinct corroborated by evidence, sirs. Delay risked asset loss." Affirmative murmurs followed, the chain bending slightly toward validation. But the cost emerged in sidelong glances from peers, some admiring, others wary, as if her stand threatened the comfort of unquestioned orders. By noon, the public layer thickened. A press pool assembled at the gate, vetted embeds from military times seeking quotes on the hangar revelation. Base POW handled it, scripted releases emphasizing ongoing review without specifics, yet leaks seeped. A handler's off-record chat with a reporter, framing Elena's choice as moral courage in a rigid system. Her name surfaced in dispatches, not as hero, but as catalyst, drawing eyes from sister units, emails pinging her inbox with support from distant bases. Rex, oblivious yet attuned, pressed against her leg during a midday walk, his presence grounding the scrutiny. Afternoon ops shifted. Elena and Rex joined a mock triangulation exercise in the training yard, handlers simulating signal hunts with buried emitters. The sun beat down, sweat beading under her collar, the dog's tongue lolling as he quartered the grass. Patel's jacks worked parallel, their alerts sinking like a well-drilled fire team. Success came swift, Rex pinpointing a mock cache, his huff precise. Witnesses abounded, junior sailors on perimeter duty, their salutes lingering a beat longer, respect earned through the unfolding truth. As dusk fell, Elena stood on the tarmac, watching a C-130 spool up for stateside, its props whipping the air into frenzy. Graves approached, dossier in hand. SOCOM's forming a recovery task force. Your input's key. K-9 lead on ground sense. The words sealed her role, transforming personal loss into institutional pivot. Rex sat alert beside her, ears perked to the roar, as if sensing the horizon's call. The reckoning spread, her integrity a quiet force reshaping the chain, not with fanfare, but with the steady grind of reform, one alert at a time. In the rigid world of seals and oaths, loyalty to truth proved the ultimate command. The salt-tanged wind off the Pacific whipped across the training fields of Coronado, carrying the sharp report of blank rounds from a distant live fire exercise. Elena Vasquez knelt in the damp grass, her knees pressing into the earth, still cool from the night's fog, as Rex quartered the mock insertion site with methodical sweeps. His nose skimmed inches above the ground, nostrils flaring at the faint chemical traces planted to simulate evasion markers, soil composites from Syrian samples, calibrated to match the hangar logs. It was mid-morning, 3 days after the briefing, and the recovery task force's prep had pulled her detachment into overdrive, handlers and analysts converging on the base, turning routine yards into a grid of precision drills. Graves oversaw from the observation post, a portable shelter rigged with monitors displaying Rex's telemetry. Heart rate steady at 120, scent acquisition peaking on target. "Vasquez, rotate him left. Test the wind shift," he called over the radio, his voice cutting through the static like a honed blade. Eleanor signaled with a subtle hand gesture, her gloved fingers slicing the air. Rex pivoted without hesitation, his paws silent on the turf. Body low and elongated in the search posture she drilled into him during endless nights at the kennels. The dog's focus was absolute, a mirror to her own. The discovery had elevated their bond from operational asset to linchpin, every alert now scrutinized for the task force's go-no-go. Around the perimeter, a ring of observers noted the exercise, junior officers from SOCOM, their notebooks open, pencils scratching observations, a pair of NCIS techs calibrating drone feeds, even a civilian contractor from the scent lab, her lab coat fluttering like a white flag. Elena felt their eyes, not as pressure, but as the weight of consequence. Her initial defiance in the hangar now woven into the fabric of reform. The task force's mandate had expanded overnight, not just recovery, but a full protocol overhaul for K-9 integration in Intel Ops, her testimony cited in the draft briefings. Yet the moral tension lingered, pushing Rex too hard, risked burnout, a handler's quiet fear, while holding back could doom the lost team to another cycle of forgotten signals. Rex alerted on the third pass, a precise sight with his muzzle pointing to a buried vial, the glass glinting faintly under the sun. Elena marked the spot with a flagged stake, her voice low into the radio. "Hit confirmed, Grid 7 Alpha, scent profile matches archive soil." Applause didn't follow. Instead, Graves's team converged with measured efficiency, extracting the sample for verification. The intel colonel from the board approached, his boots crunching gravel. "Impressive. Your dog's red could shave days off ground recon." Eleanor stood, saluting crisply, Rex rising to flank her. "He's trained for it, sir, but field variables, weather, interference, that's the real test." Her words carried the restraint of experience, masking the deeper pull. If Marco and the others were out there evading in hostile terrain, Rex's nose might be their beacon home. The debrief unfolded in the Annex's ops center, a windowless bunker humming with servers and the low murmur of analysts cross-referencing data. Elena sat at the edge of the table, Rex curled under her chair, his warmth a steady pulse against her ankle. Torres from JAG reviewed the exercise footage, pausing on Rex's fixation. This validates the hangar finds chain of custody. SOCOM's authorizing a forward element, K9 handlers, embedded with Delta for the insertion. The room nodded, but Elena caught the undercurrent. Her role meant leaving the base, stepping from symbol to operator, where orders could clash with conscience anew. Graves met her eyes across the table, a subtle incline of his head. Trust earned, but the chain still demanded obedience. Outside, the base thrummed with subdued urgency, supply crates rumbling toward the flight line on flatbeds, sailors in coveralls double-checking manifests under the relentless sun. Whispers had solidified into quiet advocacy, handlers petitioning for expanded K9 quals in their units, citing Elena's case in informal memos. Even Kane, reassigned to galley duty, had sent a terse note through channels. OU1 kept my head down. No apology, but a crack in the resentment, the public reckoning forging unlikely bridges. Media embeds trailed the perimeter now, their cameras capturing approved angles of the task force prep, framing the story as institutional evolution rather than scandal. Afternoon brought a private consult in Graves's office, the door sealed against the corridor's foot traffic. He poured coffee from a battered pot, the steam rising in lazy curls, and slid a mug her way. "Command's naming you lead handler for the op. Rex's profile fits the terrain sense perfectly." Elena sipped, the bitterness grounding her. "Sir, if we find them. The system's exposed. Cover-ups don't end with extraction." Graves leaned back, his chair groaning, ribbons catching the desk lamp's glow. "That's the cost of integrity, petty officer. You lit the fuse, now it burns upward. But remember, our job's the mission, not the fallout." His words echoed her dilemma. Loyalty to the lost versus the oath that bound her actions, a tension Rex alone seemed to navigate without fracture. As the sun dipped, Eleanor walked Rex along the beach access path, the waves crashing in rhythmic cadence, foam licking the sand like tentative scouts. The dog's leash was loose, his strides matching hers, nose lifting to the brine-heavy air. She paused at a tide pool, crouching to let him sniff the water's edge, his reflection rippling beside hers, partner in silence, witness to her resolve. The task force's timeline accelerated. Wheels up in 72 hours, a Black Hawk ride to staging in Jordan. Personal stakes sharpened, leaving her detachment facing the ghosts of Syria where grief had once hollowed her. Yet the legacy stirred. Her stand had prompted a directive from CENTCOM, mandating K9 alerts in all post-op intel reviews, a quiet reform rippling through special ops commands. Back at the kennels, the evening routine unfolded with familiar precision. Fresh water in the bowl, a pat-down for burrs, the soft click of the run gate. Other handlers worked nearby, their dogs settling into straw beds. Murmurs of support exchanged over the fences. Patel leaned on the rail, Jax dozing at his feet. "You're going in. Make it count for Ruiz." Elena nodded, clipping a treat to Rex's collar as reward. "We will. And when we do, the chain changes, for all of us." The words hung, a vow forged in discipline, the bond with Rex the unyielding core. Night fell heavy. Stars pricking the sky above the barracks. Elena lay awake, the distant hum of generators lulling her thoughts. The hangar refusal had been the spark. Now, as reform took shape, her conscience demanded follow-through. In the rigid hierarchy of seals and salutes, one dog's instinct had proven that truth once unearthed demanded pursuit, no matter the personal toll. If this story already has your respect, hit the like button. It helps the story of Elena Vasquez reach those who still believe in honor. The first light of dawn filtered through the salt-crusted blinds of the staging tent in Al Udeid Air Base, Jordan, casting elongated shadows across the canvas floor. Elena Vasquez adjusted the straps of her tactical vest, the weight familiar yet heavier now, laced with the gravity of purpose. Rex sat alert beside her cot, his coat brushed to a fine sheen, ears perked to the low rumble of C-17 engines spooling outside. The air hummed with the scent of diesel exhaust and hot sand sifting under the tent flaps, a prelude to the insertion that had consumed the past week. Her team, 3 handlers, 6 K9s, embedded with a Delta assault element, had prepped in isolation, telemetry feeds from Coronado syncing Rex's alerts to the evasion logs unearthed in the hangar. Captain Torres's voice crackled over the secure line from stateside, her tone clipped as always. Insertion window opens at 400 Zulu. Primary objective, confirm signals at grid north of Altanf. K9 priority on ground traces. Vasquez, your point with Rex. Trust the read. Elena keyed her mic, response steady. Understood, ma'am. Assets green. She glanced at Graves, who had rotated in as task force liaison, his presence a bridge from the base's reckoning to this forward edge. His nod was brief, eyes reflecting the shared understanding. The hangar find had propelled them here, but success demanded the same discipline that had sparked it, obedience tempered by conscience. The Black Hawk lifted off into the pre-dawn haze, rotors thumping a rhythmic cadence that vibrated through Elena's bones. Rex braced in the jump seat, muzzled for the flight, his body language calm amid the crew's controlled tension. Below, the Jordanian desert stretched like a vast, undulating sea, dotted with wadis and the faint scars of old convoy routes. Elena reviewed the sat feeds on her tablet, thermal anomalies matching the logs, pings faint but persistent, suggesting a holdout cell rather than a mass grave. The moral calculus had evolved, duty now aligned with pursuit, the chain's reform directive mandating full recovery efforts. Yet doubt lingered in the quiet moments. What if the team had adapted, gone rogue to survive? Extraction meant not just lives, but confronting the institutional lapses that had left them adrift. Touchdown came swift in a moonlit LZ, dust devils swirling as the team fast-roped into the wadi. Eleanor hit the ground rolling, unclipping Rex's muzzle with a soft command, "Free!" The dog surged forward, nose to the parched earth, his paws kicking up fine grit that clung to her boots. The Delta Point man signaled clear, his suppressed M4 sweeping the ridgeline, while the handlers fanned out in bounding overwatch. The air was thick with the dry mineral tang of sun-baked stone, undercut by the faint organic rot Rex zeroed on, a match to the hangar crate's soil profile, decayed fabric and human trace. Elena's pulse synced to his pace, her carbine at low ready, scanning boulders for threats. No gunfire shattered the silence. This was recon, not assault. The ops restraint a nod to the reform Elena's stand had influenced, prioritizing intel over expedience. Rex's first alert came at a shallow cave mouth, half obscured by scrub brush, his body dropping into a rigid point, a low huff escaping his throat. Elena marked it with a chem light, whispering into her radio, "Contact, bearing 320. Sent, confirmed." The team converged, NVGs painting the world in green hues, as the lead Delta Tech swept for booby traps. Inside, the cave yielded fragments, a frayed rucksack, blood-stained but recent, and etched coordinates on the wall, evasion markers from the logs. No bodies but signs of passage, boot prints leading north, faint but deliberate. Elena knelt, gloved hand sifting the dust, Rex pressing close, his warmth a steady anchor. The find rippled through the comms. Positive trace, pushing vector. Hours blurred into a grueling stalk under the rising sun, the team's formation tight. Water rationed in the escalating heat. Rex led unerringly, his alerts stacking evidence, a discarded canteen stamped with Ruiz's unit insignia, fibers snagged on thorns, matching the tag's chain alloy. Elena's mind replayed the hangar standoff. Kane's obstruction, Graves's probing gaze, the board's scrutiny. That defiance had forced this moment, the institution's quiet pivot, evident in the ops green light, SOCOM's new protocols, citing K9 validation in all post-loss reviews. Handlers back home monitored via SatLink, their support a digital thread weaving loyalty across distances. By midday, the trail crested a ridge overlooking a derelict outpost, its walls pocked by old mortar fire. Rex fixated 50 meters out, hackles rising, but not at threat. Familiarity, the dog's tail giving a single restrained wag. Elena signaled halt, heart thudding as shadows stirred in the compound. The Delta sniper glassed it, 4 figures, gaunt but upright, emerging with hands raised, uniforms tattered but recognizable. "Contact, friendlies!" The call went out, voices cracking with restrained elation. Elena unslung her pack, Rex straining at the leash as the team advanced in controlled bounds. Marco Ruiz stepped forward first, his face hollowed by months of evasion, eyes widening at the sight of the dog. "Vasquez? That you?" His voice was rough, disbelieving, as Rex broke free on command, bounding to nuzzle his leg, tail blurring. The reunion unfolded in hushed efficiency. Med checks, hydration packs distributed. The lost team, Ruiz, Hale, Petrov, and a 4th survivor, collapsing into the helo's embrace. No speeches, just the quiet clasp of hands, Ruiz's grip lingering on Elena's shoulder. "Heard rumors stateside. Your dog. He remembered us." She nodded, clipping Rex's leash as the rotors spun up, the bond between them now legend in whispers. Back at Al-Udaid, the debrief stretched into the evening. The tent lit by harsh fluorescence, the air cooling with the desert night. Torres's team documented every detail, the recovery a cornerstone for the reform wave. Mandatory K9 sweeps in evasion protocols, intel chains audited for signal dismissals. Elena's testimony elevated to training modules. Graves pulled her aside post-session, his voice low over the clatter of packing crates. "You didn't just find them, petty officer. You fixed a fracture in the system." She saluted Rex at heel, the weight of transformation settling, from handler to mentor, her integrity a beacon for juniors navigating the chain's rigid turns. Word reached Coronado ahead of their return flight, handlers assembling at the tarmac, dogs forming ranks like silent sentinels. Kane stood at the edge, his posture straight for once, offering a crisp salute as Elena deplaned with Rex. The base's legacy shifted that week, memorials updated with recovered etchings, Ruiz's team reintegrating into light duties, their stories fueling quiet advocacy for overlooked assets. Elena walked the kennels that night, the soft pant of dogs a chorus of loyalty, her hand on Rex's head. In the world of orders and oaths, one refusal had proven that conscience, guided by unerring trust, could redeem the lost and reshape the whole. Subscribe for more stories of loyalty, courage, and justice within the ranks. Thank you for watching the case of the SEAL's dog refused to leave the hangar. Inside, they found proof her unit never died in combat. See you in the next one. In the end, discipline forged not just soldiers, but guardians of truth, their legacies etched in the unyielding sand of duty.